So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. We are delighted to have you here this evening. All of you, I would like to thank especially the Ambassador of Canada and the Ambassador of Finland for their presence. We thank them very much. And Belgium, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Close.
3 ambassadors. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This session is entitled Expectations of the Foreign Investors Regarding Economic Reforms. And I'm honored and delighted to moderate such an expensive group of distinguished speakers. I say expensive because collectively they represent, I think, more than $1.5 billion investments in Serbia. And if I'm not mistaken, the total foreign investment in Serbia is 12 billion. So we have here almost more than 15% of the total investment here. So I thank them very much. We have with us Mr. Ernst Bode, the Vice President of Messer Group and Executive Director of Messer Technologies. We have Mr. Vladimir Čupić, the Chief Executive Officer of the Atlantic Group. Mr. John Kiritsis, the Chief Executive Officer of Deleuze in Serbia. Mr. Vladislav Lalic, the Property and Expansion Manager of IKEA Southeast Europe. And Giorgio Marchegiani, the Chief Executive Officer of the DDR Novi Sad. I will only say a few bullet points just to put the stage, and then we will continue with some opening remarks by each participant, and then we shall open the floor for discussion. The world, Europe, and the whole region has been through another difficult year. Economic recession, terrorism, and now the critical and very painful refugee crisis have marked most of the European countries, including Serbia's main economic partners. Therefore, the economy here in Serbia has been also impacted by these unfavorable world and regional conditions. However, despite of this, I think the latest report in Serbia presents some signs of economic growth. The biggest success, I think, on the microeconomic side of the business environment in Serbia, it was mentioned this morning by a number of people, was the fiscal consolidation and primarily the reduction of the fiscal deficit, which of course is due primarily to the reduction of pensions and salaries in the public administration. It remains to be seen, though, how this is going to be translated in the elections on 24th of April. The bad news, of course, is that the national debt keeps growing. Unemployment rate is increasing and is still very high, especially the youth. Regarding the EU integration process, very little has been achieved, unfortunately. Competitiveness needs to be improved, and this is one of the key challenges for this year and one of the major tasks of the new Serbian government. We need, of course, to recognize that the government had set a few important initiatives to put in motion some good steps for the attraction of foreign investments in Greece. We're going to discuss this a little later. I will only read a few of the suggestions of the Foreign Investors Council that they made in the white paper, that the new Serbian government needs to accelerate the rate of transition reforms in order to improve further the business climate and bring Serbia closer to the European Union, to reduce and simplify bureaucratic procedures, increase the attention to implementation of regulations and improve the judiciary system, which is very important, reform the public sector, we listened a lot this morning about it, promote exports as a key vehicle for economic growth, and assist more effectively through the establishment of a new mechanism all those international companies which have interest in entering the Serbian market. With these brief remarks, I would like to open the floor to our speakers, our moderators, who are going to make, as I said, a few opening remarks, and then we're going to have a dialogue. With this, I would like to invite Ernst to say a few words.
So we agreed first to introduce ourselves a little bit, and then, so I don't know if I'm from Messer Technogas. Be here since next year will be 20 years. I think we were one of the first privatizations. Messer owns 81% of the biggest technical and medical gas producer in the country. So far we invested about 130 million. And for Western European standards, all these investments are super dangerous. Our biggest investment is in Smederevo with the steel mill. Our second biggest investment is in Bor with the copper mill. So I would say we are not afraid of risk, and we hope in the better of the country. And so far we're managing. Yeah, when it comes then to the first statements, I think the country has a huge potential, enormous potential. However, the problems we have, and I say this I think since nearly 10 years, the problems are always the same. So we have an uncontrolled administration. We have some happy lawmaking, and the happy lawmaking. So what the country provides to the business is not an environment in which you thrive to improve, to be better, to do business. I think we are more facing an environment where everything is characterized by over-regulation. And it's already bad enough if you see the tsunami which we have since years, which is coming from European legislation. No, it's not enough. We have to always put something Serbian on top of it to make it really complicated. So.
Thank you very much. Vladimir?
Well, I mean, I would just briefly add a few points. I'll speak in English because I think some of the speakers are also in English.
Okay.
I don't think it's a problem. If necessary, I will speak in Serbian. I would like to agree with many of the things that you've said. As far as we are concerned, we have quite a sizable investment on Lafti Group in the whole region. We're basically a regional company. When you look at the Atlantic Group, the major production facilities are actually in Serbia and in Slovenia, whereas in Croatia, where the head of the company is, it's predominantly distribution capacities. But nonetheless, in Serbia, we have several companies like Sokoštalk, like Granprom, which is a coffee producer, Foodland, and we have nearly 2,000 employees in Serbia and roughly 200 million euro revenues. And apart from that, Serbia is when it comes to growth in sales, Serbia is the most important market. I mean, the growth last year was the largest in Serbia. And when it comes to profit contribution, Serbia also plays a major role. But we're looking at the market not as a Serbian market, not as a single country. We're looking at it as a part of a region. We actually, our internal organization is structured in a way that we cover services, we cover products, and we cover strategic units, regardless of the national boundaries. And for us, it is critically important that the both political process on one side and the economic process on the other side within the region is not hampered by any of the events, that the trade facilitation is done in a way that it provides growth, and it is essential for our business. The second element, which we look at, is using the local capacities and turning them into export platforms. We are genuinely strategically oriented towards enabling local production companies and local brands to be exported into a global market. And we are using the brands and the production facilities which are located in the whole region and creating a strategic platform which we are delivering to the markets in the West, primarily Austria, Switzerland, and Germany in the first instance, and the second instance is going to be throughout Western Europe and Northern Europe and effectively the whole world. It does sound a little bit ambitious, but as far as we're concerned, it's an achievable strategy because we are doing it. And some of the branding, in some of the brands, we have very large market shares in Western European countries, so there is real no reason for us not to grow. And we are closely looking in all the events which are happening in the region, in the Europe, because we believe that on one side, the political processes which are currently happening, some of them depicted by Simeon, and economic challenges which the whole Europe is facing, are going to be a key determinant in how the market is going to play in the next years. For us, this is a critical issue, and we are, as far as we're concerned, genuinely interested in enabling that the regional companies have sufficient capacity to supply European markets, because we believe this is achievable.
Thank you, Vladimir. John, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, just a couple of words.
Yes.
I mean, we're part of the Deleuze Group. The Deleuze Group is one of the biggest retailers in the world. We invested here in Serbia in 2011. In 2011, it was the biggest investment that has ever happened as a foreign investment in Serbia. We have around 400 stores. We continue to expand, continuously expanding. We have 11,000 people working for our company. I think we have a huge social responsibility in Serbia, because we work with over 2,000 suppliers. So therefore, by working through these suppliers, we are creating a lot of opportunities for the local suppliers. For our private brands, again, we work with 120 producers. Again, very important to make sure that these producers are being brought up to standard in order to be able to use these products outside Serbia. So we are here ensuring that we are, if you look at the European Union, the rules that they have, we are already working on those rules inside our own company. If you look at food safety, we are the pioneers in food safety in our company. So we would like to continue. We are happy here. But sometimes we are not happy with the rate of things or the rate of the changes that are happening at the moment. We want to expand much more. We want to open stores. We want to open a second logistics center. But we need things to work much easier. We work with the Foreign Investors Council. We are working together with the government in order to help and to push ideas through on how we can work better in Serbia.
Thank you, John. Vladislav?
It seems that our stories are very similar, and in that way, IKEA's story has started here nearly 25 years ago, when we have tried to actually open the first store, but then due to the well-known events, this did not happen. Nevertheless, if we look on the bright side, we are here since 2007, IKEA Southeast Europe, comprising of Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, and Romania. We have 2 operating stores in Bucharest and in Zagreb. And after a lot of troubles, a lot of problems we have encountered during the past 7 years, as it has also been now present in the media today and in the past weeks, we are actually now starting for real to construct the first store in Belgrade in a couple of weeks. It has been a long path. Some of the colleagues here have actually already touched it. And I think that will be also something we will discuss here in this panel. But nevertheless, after all that, we are here. There are some things positive happening. There is also quite a lot of things to be done and which needs to be solved and needs to be changed and reformed. That's just an introduction.
Thank you. And Giorgio?
Thank you. So, I'm CEO of DDR Novi Sad, an insurance company. So our story is very different from the other stories for some reason. Because an insurance company is something which works from the local market on the local market, so it's not done to import, export, it's done to produce a service which is key to economic development for a country. So our choice to come to Serbia, which dates back in 2007, was really a choice linked to believing in Serbia, not for the labor cost or the skill of the people, but just to come, as we are insured by profession. We are a very big Italian group, Unipol. Unipol SAI is the controlling company, and we are market leader in our country, and we need to look for expansion, and this was a part of this strategy, which I hope will continue in Serbia and in other countries. Now, we bought the company from the state. It was a privatization. Wonderful company, a great name and insurance of this country. Anyway, a company which used to be more monopolist in its market, which was Vojvodina at that time, which was, let's say, so behaving in this way, so needed a lot of turnaround. We bought the company basically based on 3, let's say, pillars. 3 postulates. The one was the macroeconomic growth. It was 2007, which we failed to achieve, because the country failed to achieve because of the economic crisis. So this one was not good. I was not in the company, was not here, so I have a detached approach to that. The second one is our ability to restructure a business in the insurance and bring it to, let's say, insurance technology, Western European standard, from the point of view of the risk. Insurance is about risk, and insurance is about IT, it's about capital management. So we wanted to do that. We achieved that. We did a great turnaround. There is still a way to go to change a company with a strong tradition in a country with a very proud approach to things is not easy, but we did it. The third thing, which we discussed also in this panel, is we expected the regulatory framework, which for insurance is key, is a regulated business, to change heavily and quickly in favor of or in direction of European standard. With or without entering the EU, at that time it was too early, it was not like today. So we expected a big, gradual but strong change, and the completion of privatization. Still nowadays we have a Dunav insurance company which is state-owned, so this didn't happen mostly. This is one of the critical points. So this is our experience. We have about 1,300 people in Serbia, and also we are optimistic. We work a lot also with Italian Serbian Chamber of Commerce. We work for the best for the future, but there is a lot of way to go. So this is my start.
Thank you, Giorgio. Vladimir, I would like to start with you. We mentioned all these European, world, regional challenges. Equity markets are suffering, financial distress in the European banking sector, slow growth in China, all these things. How do we address these risks, and how we can minimize any negative effects in this region, in Serbia primarily?
Well, it's a good question, but it's also very complicated. And I think that, first of all, there has to be an agreement whether we are facing another crisis similar to 2008 or not. But nonetheless, we have significant signs which are indicating that we might be going into another recession cycle. And these are not the ones to be neglected. And the whole region, if you look at the OECD report, the latest one, which came, has across the board same problems. Low investment, high unemployment, high indebtedness, and the capacity to resolve another serious crisis is significantly diminished in a situation like that. So to be prudent, I think the whole area has to be aware of the fact that we might be looking into another serious situation, and I think first acknowledgement of this possibility is necessary. So whatever we've been speaking about in terms of reforms which are happening, let's say 2015 we've had a relatively good fiscal adjustment, but it's based primarily on salary reduction or pension reductions and not achieving certain investments which are being budgeted. But nonetheless, it's a huge step, putting the budget under control, putting the deficit under control. The major structural reforms are still ahead of us. If we're going to be facing the issues which we're facing, it's not a matter of postponing or delaying for any reason the reforms which have to happen. So we anyhow have to implement them even more in a situation which I believe is coming. Looking at the fact that we are looking right now, Europe has pretty much the same problem as we do. They're printing money, they're doing the quantitative easing, and the transformation mechanism does not translate this money printing into loans to corporates. It's going very, very slow. The major problem, according to most of the economists, is high level of NPLs in European banks, and the fact that this issue is not resolved. It's the same here. So if we need to address the problems, we need to address them in a way that solution is considered, resolved, and accepted. In this way, I believe that there is no time for delay, and I think that the sooner we face those challenges in terms of bringing up decisions that have to be made, in implementing the reform agenda, the easier we will get through the problems which we're going to be facing. The second thing, which I consider we may discuss it later on, I would not like to consume too much time, is regional cooperation, which I believe is going to be essential and instrumental in development of Southeast Europe.
Absolutely. In view of what is happening in Europe these days, the possible Brexit, fatigue about enlargement, what is your assessment about the accession of Western Balkans to the European Union?
If you, I think somebody asked me a very interesting question. Whether you ask somebody, would you like to join the EU right now? Probably the answer would be yes. If the Brexit is successful and the Great Britain really leaves EU, and you start asking that question after the Brexit, the result might be quite different. So the challenges with the EU, which the EU is facing with the Brexit, with all the problems there, are so big that that paying too much attention to Southeast Europe is not the primary agenda right now, but not at the top of the agenda. Partially, I believe that in such a way, we have to do what is necessary to prepare ourselves for accession. And the problem is such that it's difficult to implement such policies when on the other side you have not so much positive signals in terms of accession. But the things which we need to implement are the ones which are providing that the political and economic systems in Serbia and in the whole region become inclusive, that they become supportive of economic growth and economic welfare and social welfare. This cannot be forgotten, cannot be omitted. So whether we are going to become member of EU in 5, 6, 7, or 8 years, the things that we have to do are primarily of relevance to the country that we live in, and to the people which live in those countries. And they have to be implemented irrespectively of whether we're going to be there. What is the perspective? I think the whole process is going to be delayed. I don't believe that Europe will opt for a different strategy when in crisis open up. I think that Europe will more or less return to a strategy of a little bit tighter approach, a little bit clinging to themselves. And I believe that the accession process is not going to be as rapid as we once thought it will be. And it's fair and it's okay, and I believe we have to accept this. And there's a lot of things that we have to do, even without being the member of EU. I am 100% proponent of that thing, but we have to face the political facts which are currently happening in EU. We cannot close our eyes in front of them. I believe it's only fair to be aware of all those things.
But of course, we don't know how Europe is going to be, the European Union is going to be after 5 years from now. This is another big question. Absolutely. Ernst, how European Union may support Serbia and other countries in the region to achieve, growth, development, etc. Yeah.
Generally, first I would like to
Yeah,
agree
sure.
with Vladimir, because I think Serbia has to move ahead now with or without the European Union, and it's got to make its homework, and it's got to be economically stronger. And what I mentioned before, those are the obstacles. They have to be cleared, and the country will develop and flourish. The countless obstacles, the country taking them away will be flourishing. When it comes to the European Union, I personally think, and I believe I can say that, I take the right to say that. I'm German. Yeah. So now it counts.
Yes.
I think the role the European Union played in the Balkans is far from being as it could. So I think the European Union closes its eyes. It's not really in the focus. It's heartland, it's European heartland. But also, as Vladimir said, it's not on the agenda. It's not top of the agenda, and it was not top of the agenda. And it only comes on the top of the agenda if there's killing. So if you murder each other, yeah, okay, this is what we don't want to see. Then it becomes top of the agenda. For the rest of the day, once poor, always poor. Yeah? Again, I'm German, I say it. And I also have a nice example for that. You all remember South Stream? South Stream was cancelled by the European Union. Actually, it was cancelled based on the fact that there was on some European energy rule that the production and the distribution should be separated. And Bulgaria had set high hopes on it. Serbia had set high hopes on it. Cheap energy, of course, is a critical factor for the development of the economy. And then European Union put pressure on Bulgaria and the whole thing was cancelled. And I believe it goes by the rule, once poor, always poor. Yeah? And that is not fair. And on top, it's not fair if you come then and say, you come here and you lecture. Yeah? I mean, it's good if Serbia improves, it's good if it gets advice, but I think it needs a helping hand and not permanent lecturing.
Giorgio, would you like to comment about...
He's Italian, he can say this.
The South Stream, I think we
Not
did
about
our
South
part from the
What about the
government.
cannibalization that, you know, the laws and...
Yes. No, what I see from my point of view, which is in general the legal framework and the regulation, but mostly the financial market regulation because it's my business, I really think the convergence of Serbia to the European Union is a very, very difficult task for Serbia. And my point is exactly that, similar to what has been said, that Serbia needs a lot of help and support, genuine support, not financial support, but support in preparing this regulation. Because this regulation moves towards Europe, which in turn moves on, changes. So it's a moving target. I think it's very difficult, and sometimes I really think about the institutions, first of all the government, but then also National Bank of Serbia, that for us is insurance and bank regulator. They have a huge task, and this task needs to be done with some principle. First principle is do not, please, not complicate too much. What Bode was saying about the fact that if you copy-paste is not enough. You copy-paste and you give the 2-3% difference Serbian way, which makes this completely then, let's say, difficult to implement for us. Okay, this should not be done. But second thing is that really there should be, the second thing is that should be some gradual approach, because we know very well, being in the European Union, that not all what is European is good. Europe is a very complicated mechanism, and when a small country, which maybe has the advantage of being more flexible under certain points of view, and less, let's say, a result of compromises, because the 28 states, then they do compromises in the regulation, moves towards being part of this. This must be done in an intelligent way, because we are in Serbia, to a certain extent also, we want to be in a market which grows and has some more flexibility. So please do not really accelerate too much these convergence, because we expect Serbia to be part of the EU at this point. Not in 2007 we expected, but we do now. Maybe we might be wrong, it might be late, but we expect this to happen. But still, I see really the regulators here to struggle. Not only the regulator, but you have to do regulation, then implement the regulation, explain to people regulation, live up to regulation, and then have the sanctions to the regulation. And this is far from being obvious. And so my really, if I may hope or ask or candidate also even for support, is really to think to a very intelligent, I think this is a key part of the strategy, to build up a legal regulatory framework in all the economy, from my point of view mostly in the financial market, but for all the economy, which is realistic, not simply neither copy-paste, neither do Serbian way, nor do in Serbian way, and not all at once in a system which is already overwhelmed. So I think this is a challenge that needs some, not in this panel, but really some intelligent thinking, some support and some use of the historical experience of other countries.
Thank you, Giorgio. John, Deleuze is perhaps one of the three largest investors here. Do you get some support from the Serbian authorities in this after-investment period? What kind of issues, perhaps you...
We've heard through the panel also, there will be issues, and there will always be issues. Yes. But we are here to make sure that also that we are working with the government. So we have a lot of vehicles that we can use. We have the Foreign Investors Council, we have NALED, we have AmCham, we have also the Chamber of Commerce. Let's use them. I know it's going to be slow, and it's frustrating for us. I want to invest, or my company wants to invest much more on an annual basis. So we need things to speed up. It's like we said also, we will be part of the EU. It could be later, but it's up to us to make sure that we are already implementing what we need to implement from the EU. Our company is doing it. We are not waiting to be part of the EU to look at food safety or the way we build our stores or if you look at it from a donations part, we have made it a decision on our behalf that we will donate, even though there's no tax benefit for us over here, even though it's treated in a negative manner. Irrespective of that, we will go forward, we are donating. Why? But at the same time, working through FIC or those channels in order to make it much more simpler to do the business over here.
IKEA took 8 years in order to start building.
In the second attempt.
In the second attempt.
Part two.
You don't have the record in the region.
No.
There is a project in Greece.
We tried hard, but it didn't work out.
There is a project in Greece,
Yeah.
Costa Navarino, which is one of the largest hotels. It took 15 years until they started.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I can better a little bit.
So please tell us a little bit about your...
No, but I think it's, from our point of view, we can talk very concretely about different types of problems we have encountered, and we can categorize them basically in 3 categories. First would be the administrative part. And then, of course, when we say administrative part, this is basically huge inefficiency of the whole administrative process and the procedures. We have recently, together with the government, formed a working group, which then have supported this process where we had one point of contact and where we didn't have to run from one side to another side in order to solve all the different types of problems. Of course, it's not a problem to run around, but this is not really very efficient and not very... It's on the bitter end, very, very time-consuming. Just for your information, even with that working group, which has one person who is the speaking partner, we had 17 relevant institutions which took part in the working group. So you can imagine then if that working group did not exist, how complicated and complex that have been. Legal part, the colleagues here have already mentioned, the legal framework, the lack of coordination between the general legal framework and the bylaws. You all remember the very famous law of conversion. I don't think we need to comment on that, and that has taken some years trying to make attempting to break the record. And then, of course, the last and not least is the technical side, where actually we have seen that at different locations we have tried to work through, there was a complete lack of infrastructure and lack of all the urbanistic and zoning plans, which of course on the location where the future IKEA store finally will be, it took us 35 months to produce the zoning plan, which was financed and done by IKEA. So, which is not so bad, exactly. It could have taken longer. So, but I mean, and all this put together, of course, this is where we, being also a big investor in the initial phase of 70-80 million euros, and that will double or triple quite soon, expect to see more progress, more reforms, more development, because if a company like IKEA, which is a 32 billion euro business on total and global level, can face those problems, then of course you can all imagine what kind of problems can be faced by other smaller investors which do not have that attention and that level of investment and so on. So this is where we have faced most of the problems, and this is also where we have seen that some things are happening, and where we do expect that more things will develop and change in the future.
Did you face the same issues in the neighboring countries, or more or less, yes?
More or less, yes. I would say that both Croatian and Romanian examples have been similar, and to a certain extent same, to a certain extent different, but there were not that many differences, and also bearing in mind that both Romania and Croatia are European Union countries.
Ernst, compared with other countries in the region, what are the main, obstacles that Serbia, present for foreign investors these days? You mentioned few, but already.
Yeah, I'm responsible for the whole region, I must say. So from Slovenia to Turkey, lately outside to Turkey. I don't know. I have the feeling, when you look back at the year 2000, if I recall the numbers correctly, Romania had a GDP per capita of 1,600 euro. Serbia had a GDP per capita of 3,400 or 3,600. Now Romania has a GDP per capita of 7,200, something like that. And Serbia, if I'm not wrong, 4,400. That's where we are. That speaks for itself. And that was done in Romania on 20 million, 21 million people. And in Serbia, this was done on 7.5. Obviously, things are not moving fast enough here. And we are happy to look, all the Romanians. But obviously, they have done things right. Things are moving forward there. And in Serbia, we are standing and we're not really, business-oriented. And this is similar. Serbia and Bosnia is very similar. Albania is a very special story. But the other countries, Romania, Hungary, Slovenia, that is something where you can really look, say, okay, they have done something quite different than we, and obviously they have done it more right. And Serbs are very smart people, and there's a lot of energy here. But somehow we're not getting our horsepowers on the street. Yeah, it's somehow lost, and I believe it's always this adding something and making it more. I'll give you one example, if I can. One moment. We're talking about reforms, and there was a great reform in 2005. We got an antitrust law, so competition law, 2005. And of course, it's now a very strict law. Before there was nothing, now it's very strict. And I'll give you an example. If Coca-Cola Atlanta, you're the American ambassador, right? American ambassador, Coca-Cola Atlanta, how much they have? $100 billion revenue?
Something like that, yes.
They want to buy a water bottler in Indonesia, let's say somewhere in Surabaya. That guy doesn't even know where Serbia is. Yeah. Coca-Cola Atlanta has to ask the Serbian antitrust authorities for the permission. So now I ask you, if they would have known that before, would they have come to Serbia? We have General Electric sourcing day. General Electric is doing a transaction probably every week. Right? 1 cubic meter of paper to the Serbian antitrust, asking for permission. In no European country, when you take over, usually you need a permission, but you do not need the permission if the target of the transaction is not in the country. Makes sense, no? It's not in Serbia, it's in Surabaya. Yeah? So the target of the merger is not in the country, you do not need permission. In Serbia, you need permission. That's crazy. Yeah? And it's something, it's European law, and we had to add something. Yeah? And these are the problems. Yeah? These are the problems. And there are countless others. Yeah? And this is what is really an obstacle to business. And also we would love to invest more. We need some projects, but we have a few things we would love to invest. It's crazy how it's always, there are obstacles, and nobody has nothing from that. There's no obstruction. It's simply as it is. Yeah. And I think we need to clean some things here in order to liberate these forces which are existing and something to move ahead.
Unfortunately, we witness the same in Greece these days. And not only these days, but these last 30, 40 years.
But you can see exactly where the countries are standing. Who has a lean regulation, who has functioning courts, sure. Who has smart and lean laws, and where are they standing? And then you have the other guys, it's linked. Yeah.
I was working for the American Embassy back in the 70s. During the Beirut War in 75, we have had in Greece, coming as refugees, 300 American companies. If we gave them incentives to stay in the country, Greece would be by far different from what it is today. later. We have had Walt Disney, they wanted to build the camp in Greece, and then by the end of the day they went to Paris. General Motors, they went to Spain instead of come to Greece. They examined possibilities that they come to Greece, but unfortunately, I mean, we lost so many opportunities because of this.
Yes. Maybe I'm talking too much, but if I can add, it's very obvious. Serbia is lacking behind now after 25 years of a dramatic lack of investment, a dramatic lack of moving ahead. Serbia is lacking behind in a technology way, in education way. So the turnaround can be made by foreign direct investment, not because of the money the investor brings, not because of the knowledge. They bring the knowledge and they bring the markets, they bring the machines. Yeah? And that is something which was really not in the focus for years, and this is something which should be pushed.
Vladimir, is there any, speaking about regional issues, is there any mechanism or common projects that possibly can foster the economies of the region here?
Well,
Energy is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, there are infrastructural projects. There's a Berlin process. There's a Thessaloniki process. There's a lot of these things which are putting in focus the regional segment of investments. And I think this is probably the best, because this is probably the easiest way how you can attract significant amounts of money, because we have to be aware, all of us. I mean, we're quite small for large players. I had a meeting with people from Apollo back in 2010, and they said, when you presented the project, they're like, okay, so do you have anything above 1 billion? And you realize that it's extremely difficult, because we don't have time to allocate resources to a group of projects which are all together 300 million euros. But it's just a matter of joining forces together through certain elements which can contribute to attract investments, whether from institutional or private investors. Mostly, we currently are, when infrastructural projects are concerned, we're looking into institutional investors, the EBRD, the EIB, and the likes. And I think the World Bank, of course, and I think this is okay, and I believe that the region lacks infrastructure significantly. But infrastructure is a facilitator. It will create growth of GDP when the investment is done, depending on the multiplicator, 1 in 5, 2, 2 in 5, whatever. But once you stop it, if there's no follow-up, if you do not provide for the development of the industrial capacities along the infrastructural lines, then the infrastructure is just a nice road and or a nice railway. It does have to have a practical purpose. And although sometimes I believe we tend to conceptualize a lot and talk about big political topics, most of the problems that we are facing right now is we have to apply again for the license to use water, which the company is using for the past 40 years. And the minister doesn't sign the application, because only with his signature the application has to be put in the process. So now I have to call the minister to sign it. I mean, these are not the problems which companies should be facing. Yes. But nonetheless, it has to be very clear that without coherent political process and determination in terms of what the country's objectives have to be, there's no way that the administration can implement this into implementable and workable processes, procedures, administrative regulations, and all kinds of things. Now it was at one point of time calculating that the delay between adopting the law and adopting the bylaws is 400 days. So the law is adopted, it envisages certain bylaws to be adopted within a certain time frame, and the average delay of adopting the bylaws is in excess of 400 days. It means that the law is inimplementable. It cannot be implemented without the bylaws. I'm sorry, but this is the way the administration works. If you do it like that in a private company, you get fired. You cannot have a delay like that. So I'm saying that we have to have this responsibility. And on a regional level, I believe for us it's important to understand that most of our companies are relatively small. Here we have Jerika, who's from Agrokor. Agrokor is huge. Agrokor is not representative of normal Balkan or Western Balkans or Southeast Europe or whatever you may call it, company. Even Atlantic is big. Atlantic is 700 million euro revenues. There's not a lot of companies like that. Few of them are here. Most of the companies are extremely small. They don't have the capacity to expand, to export all along. So some sort of coming together, some sort of combining resources and creating sufficient capacity to use the benefits of efficiency will have to be done. Whether we're talking cross-border, whether we're talking through M&As, whether we're talking through strategic alliances or any other form, without private sector coming together and working together, I don't think there's going to be a lot to say. And some of the things that Anne said, I have to underwrite once again. Anne was using 2000. 2000 was a bad year for Serbia. Can you use the year 1990, for instance? When you look at the figures of GDPs, when the breakup of former Yugoslavia started, when you look at the GDPs of Hungary, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Romania, and all the other countries, and when you look at Serbia or Bosnia or Croatia for that matter, you will see huge discrepancies. Discrepancies were closed, and we are lagging behind. And this is something which we have to face. The major challenge, I believe, is not going to be infrastructure, is not going to be monetary policy. I think the major challenge in the forthcoming period is going to be education and transforming the knowledge into a usable, practical, and ultimately profitable resource. At this point of time, we have a lack of one of the major resources which sometimes, or in some past times, we used to brag about saying that our workforce is extremely well educated. It is not. Our education is impractical, our education is unusable, and quite frankly, obsolete. And without the overall overhaul of the education system, I don't think there is a capacity to move forward. We are demographically very tight. I think Serbia is third or fourth oldest nation in the world. The demographic pyramid is such that the fertile female generation is shrinking significantly, and we will have further decline in the next census for about half a million people. And it's becoming worse and worse. With the technological development, the poor education system, and the declining demographics, the economic prospects look extremely tough. And that's why I believe that we have relatively small window of opportunity, which is next 4 to 5 years, to try to put things in order. After that, I believe we are past, we're maybe 10 years. We're crossing the point of no return. There will be few capacity or possibilities to put the demographic and economic capacities on proper track to secure the growth of 5 or 6%. This is what we need. Growth of 2% is nothing. Our lending, our borrowing costs are 4% or 4-something%. If the borrowing costs exceed the GDP growth rate, we have to increase debt. If we have to increase debt, then we have to take more loans. We have to pay back those loans, so we're getting more and more indebted. So growing 2% is not a solution. It's better than declining or going into recession, but I mean, ultimately it will not solve the problem.
That's very important issue, Sir Vladimir, but we don't have time to do it. IKEA, Vladislav, you have a very good, how you call it, chain program that you encourage domestic exports?
Supply chain, yes.
Supply chains,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think in Romania you have 300 million euros of exports?
More, 400.
Do you think that this can happen in Serbia as well when you open your, at a certain point, or I don't know?
We do hope so, and that's very much connected to what Vladimir have said. Actually, it has to do. Education is one part. Expectations is another part. We see that, unfortunately, people think that production is something where you can get rich overnight. It's not the case. And of course, then on the other side, you have the need for the stable raw materials that have to be supplied. And we know that we have a public company today, which is state-owned, which is Serbia Šume, which actually do not give any kind of guarantees on long term for the needed raw materials that can be supplied to the potential producers of furniture. We do hope this thing will change. We have already some ongoing discussions together with government officials, not only with the private producers, how to improve that and how to work on that, because it's not very logical that Serbia has one producer for IKEA, which is producing 2 items out of 9,300 that are today in IKEA range, while in neighboring Romania, which is a bigger country, 3 times, we are producing, to be very precise, last year 440 million euro. Pure export, not to our store in Bucharest, but to our stores worldwide. We do hope that this will change. Very much what you have mentioned and what some other colleagues have mentioned is very much falling into this category of the reforms which have to take and the changes of the environment, business environment, because actually, of course, it's nice to have the stores here, it's nice to retail, but production is the essence of everything. And if that will not change and will not be developed, probably the country as such and the growth will be then much lower than we do expect.
Thank you. John, you have a very strong CSR program. How, do you have encouragement by the authorities here in Serbia in order to promote, increase this?
I said it a couple of minutes ago also, and I'll repeat it. I mean, we've made a decision to do it, even though if you look at the government at the moment or the authorities, they are not ones that are promoting it in such a way because you don't get any incentives to do it. But it's up to us again. I think it needs to be done. We are doing it. We are donating. We are supporting our communities, even though it's still not recognized. Yes, we are working with the government. We are making different proposals. It's taking their time. But again, what I would like to say is, again, it doesn't stop us from doing it. It costs us a little bit more, but I think we need to do it. Yes. And we've done it, and we have one of the biggest donations also that we do now is using what we don't sell of fruit and veg on a daily basis. We have come together with a food bank, and we give it to the people. And we are now basically 6,000 people on a daily basis have a meal in their hands in over 32 different cities that we do it. And we can do much more. And that's why we're in contact again with the authorities to find ways that we can get recognized for this, be it in tax relief, VAT relief, or whatever the case can be, because we can do more. I mean, in 2015, again, we donated over 100,000 euros. It can be much more. We can do it. There's different areas that we're discussing with the authorities again. Plastic bags. I mean, that is a major pain point in all countries. And again, we will educate the customer. We use our systems to educate that they can use recyclable bags or reusable bags. But again, we cannot change the customer on our own. If the authorities don't come and support us with this, it's going to take much longer. So again, there are blockages, but it doesn't stop us from doing things. It takes a little bit longer, it costs a little bit more, sure, but we have to do it.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the status of the retail market these days in Serbia?
If you compared to what we had seen in 2011, there's a complete different story. But if you look at it today again, you would think that it's a shrinking market. It's actually not. And even though we see that people are earning less money, the market is actually growing. We are helping the market growing by making sure that the products are available, helping the consumer to shop with what he can afford to shop. So even though it's a shrinking market, I mean, and we thought it was a shrinking market, it's an expanding market. If you look at modern trade is still very small. It's about 30% of the total trade. So there's a lot of room to improve and to grow. There will be more retailers coming in, and we know that Lidl is coming in. I think it's very good for the economy. And we say that that a lot of the foreign investors don't want to come in, but look, Lidl is coming in. They see something. I mean, tough times doesn't frighten them. Legal issues doesn't frighten them. They're here to make it, and they will make it, like we are making it. Yes, we are here also to help the authorities to make changes. It'll take time.
Yes. Giorgio, going back to the insurance sector, there is a new law, I understand, of last year.
Yeah.
Are there any reforms followed up this? I mean, has they done anything to improve the situation? Or?
Well, the new insurance law has done a number of changes. interestingly enough, didn't touch a couple of points which are really key in our industry, and for a number of reasons. The points are about the market for motor insurance. So the new insurance law changed a lot of things. It was good. It goes in the right direction. We are applying it. It's fine. Good enough for that. Still, you know, the motor insurance is the first type of insurance which is usually obligatory in a country. It is the third-party liability and other insurances for the car. In Serbia, this is heavily regulated, anyhow, not only from the insurance point of view, but also linked to some, I think I'm not wrong with it, some traffic law, so which discipline the distribution of insurance through this point of, let's say in UK they are MOT, in Germany TÜV, where you bring the car for inspection. Okay, and this example is an example, and this thing is the same since ever, I think, 20 years, 30 years maybe. I mean, didn't change as Serbia changed, as many new foreign player came in. Why? Why is the question which I have? Because currently this problem was not faced by the insurance law, because exactly something between National Bank of Serbia, Ministry of Finance, it's the typical difficult problem which needs to be faced. And so was more hidden than faced, I would say. And this is 1/3 of our market. So 1/3 of our market is totally, let's say, as it used to be years ago. Let's not talk about digitalization, internet. No, we are back to, like, you know, price is fixed, distribution cost is fixed, channel is fixed. You cannot do anything about that. So we cannot compete on that. Not only, but we cannot compete, but we also have problems because indeed there is competition. You can imagine there are 20-something insurance companies in this country, and this market is totally regulated, so you cannot compete on anything. But then indeed you end up competing on something which you don't see, which is, of course, nobody wants to admit and nobody wants to say. But then this is, and why is this? This is because this is connected to the other story, the inspection points. The inspection points in Serbia, it's a totally over-capillary market. If you compare the Serbian car park in Serbia, there are about 2 million cars. If you compare similar car density around, you should have 300-400 of this point, and we have 1,200. So these points are over-capillary and as such inefficient, and as such they should, in a normal market economy, market forces would shrink the number, improve efficiency, change, and blah, 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 speed the change, and so on and so forth. This is not being the case, because this is all like connected together. So my point is that this is putting the insurance company, not only us. We paid a very high tribute in 2011, 2012, because in order to be compliant with the law, which we want to be, because our values are these, we lost half of our market share. You can imagine in a segment which is 1/3 of the market, you lose 1/3 of the market share. You can imagine what happens to your P&L, what happens to your people, what happens to this disaster. Okay? We survived. We were able to restructure the company, make the changes, develop other segments. Okay, we are strong, we want to. So no problem. But the others also are struggling. And we are basically, all of us, in a deadlock. And this is, again, a point that needs to be faced. Deadlock being either you lose the market or you lose the face. And we don't want to lose the market because it's the money our shareholders put in the market, and we don't want to lose the face because we have values, we have ethical values, we have principles, and we want to compete on a fair base. So now my question is, why this? Why this? And this was not faced by the insurance law, and it was not supposed to be faced because it's a different type of law. But my call for action, really call for action in this area, is to proceed on this as soon as possible, and this is also connected to the completion or privatization of Duna, because this, I didn't mention this, but this is also connected to the fact that the largest player in the motor insurance market has 1/3 of the 1/3 is public, is state-owned company. And when we bought DDR, we expected this to be privatized in 3-4 years, 2007. And still now they didn't appoint the advisor to do it. And they say, okay, after that, after the other, because of course it's a big company. So I think that the lesson learned, and the reason why I want to talk to this audience, which is not insurance panel, which is in another room, exactly in this moment, by coincidence. And I don't know whether we talk about that or not. Presumably not. It is the reason is that sometimes I mean we need to ask for being straight and simple. Market economy needs some simple approach. Either you liberalize or you don't pretend to have a market economy. In this case, there was let's say theoretical competition and in practice no competition, or wrong competition, and this is not the right way. So this is something which probably happened in insurance, could happen in other industries in the future, but it is really important that we get out of this as soon as possible. And also constructively, we work all the time with institutions, with National Bank, with Ministry, but at this point, I think from our experience, was a problem, is still a problem, needs to be solved.
Thank you. One last question to all the panelists. We're going to have a new government by perhaps late May or early June, depending on the discussions. What would be one piece of advice that would give to the new government in order to improve the business climate and attract more FDA? Ernst, would you like to go first?
I think it's institution building.
Institution building.
That's the main thing. I mean, it's not enough that you want to do something. You also have to have the capacity.
Vladimir?
To try not to have another elections in 2 years. Since 2000,
Count to Greece.
Since 2000 we had.
Count to
Since
Greece.
2000 we had what, 15, 16 years, 15 years effectively, 8 elections. So it's average life expectancy of a government is 2 years. If you're about to implement the reforms that we have to implement, 2 years is way not enough time. And that's why that is the only reason why things are lagging behind. And let's not fool around and let's not try to be, unless we have a stable political system which is creating politically inclusive and economically inclusive institutions, there will be no growth in excess of rate at which we borrow. And this is, I believe, of the paramount experience. Second, the first thing which I think is essential is that the structural reforms are implemented, because they are the first part of more difficult things which have to be done, and this is the reform of the social system and the reform of the pension system, which is way more complicated than restructuring EPS. And I think we have to hurry in that element in order to come to a solution where we find a workable system. I think other advice is something which I think that we as a country have to do, and this is making a clear orientation. Where do we want to be in geopolitical environment? Whether we want to be the part of the Western world and apply these standards, or we want to be part of something else, which I don't know what that is. This determination has implications, and we have to finally decide whether we want to grow up or not.
I see it very simple, actually. I think it's to deliver what has been promised, and basically, and I think that's if that's done, or half of it is done, then we are good. So that's
John?
I think it's been simple. Well, the panel is severe. There's nothing really to add.
Giorgio?
Yeah, also for me, really. Let's realize...
my advice would be that governments have to listen to these people. If these people are happy, then the situation is by far better. These are the best ambassadors for any country to, improve the business climate and create FDI.
We are very enthusiastic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have a few more minutes left. Any question or any comment from the floor? Please, but please state your name and your... Good.
Question. How do you foresee the refugee crisis affecting the region? I mean, yesterday there was a summit not reaching any decision, and you see that Turkey is almost sucking out all your pre-accession funds and more. So what is the position of the region?
Thank you, Mr. Headsteers. There's another question. Let's take all the questions so that we save a little time.
Hi, my name is Cesar Balmaceda, and I work for an American investment firm called New Way Capital. So I completely agree with, most of the conclusions regarding the reforms that are necessary. But I think that, we're going about it through a methodology that I think is flawed. And I think it's flawed not just in Serbia, I think it is flawed in 90% of the world. I think to expect deep reform that affects large amounts of people, a country of 6-7 million people, and large territories, deep reform is very hard to come, and it's very unlikely that that can happen with so much friction. I think, if we looked about doing this in small locations, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this, small locations, unproductive, uninhabited, rural greenfield sites, and we put in the whole full package of reforms, instead of just, a big fight to reduce one bad regulation that then gets sneaked back in with the next government, but the full package in a place that is, unproductive, and then create a truly powerful demonstrative model of success that people can point at, that people want to, copy, and that, that can spread, that can really change things, I think. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that. And frankly, if we look at the countries that have tried to do this, it's worked very well. I think Deng Xiaoping used the example of Hong Kong to start his special economic zones. He had the evidence from Hong Kong and started, and now these reforms have spread through the whole country, lifting 600 million out of poverty. We've seen this in Singapore, and it's spread through Malaysia, and in Dubai, and it's spread through, sort of that region. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are. This is precisely
Thank you
what
very
my
much
firm-
for your comment. Thank you. Thank you very much. Who would like to respond to the refugee question? Yes.
Well,
Or-
I think it's a part of a much bigger. We're forgetting it's not a new issue. I mean, the refugees have been coming to Italy for the last couple of years. So we're talking about something which is emanating from a genuinely unorthodox and unique political crisis in Northern Africa and Middle East. And I don't think it's going to stop. The effect to this region itself, I think Greece is under a lot of pressure, and probably Turkey. And the key element is going to be the agreement between Turkey and the EU as to how this is going to function. None of the refugees want to stay here, which is not very praising for us. When you ask them, they want to go to Germany. They want to go to Sweden. So I don't expect that there will be huge pressure in terms of number of refugees in Serbia or in Croatia or in Macedonia, for that matter. I mean, if one thing is good from the previous periods, we learned how to handle it. I mean, we've had influx of refugees from Croatia, from Bosnia, and from Kosovo. That's why the census between 1991 and 2001 showed that the number of people in Serbia were stable. They were not. That's because of the refugees. If there's too many refugees coming, the countries will implement protective measures. And this is something which I believe is essential. But without the common solution, the problem on the ground will not be resolved. And this problem cannot be resolved by EU. It has to be resolved by United States and Russia.
Yes, George, of course.
Well, I mean, for those specific cases, you can be right. From my point of view and our industry, I feel it calls for the development of all the country, basically. The issue of, personally, I wish for this country not to have one successful area where, let's say, you have in vitro perfect situation, but I wish less perfect situation for all the country, because this is probably what also, the country itself wants. And also we should aspire after all these, let's say, problems that in this area have been big in the past years. So my point of view is, if you wish, slightly different. Even though I understand that if you select and you put some greenfield situation, you don't have the legacy, but you don't have the people, maybe. So.
Thank you, Giorgio. The organizers are strict. We need to conclude. I thank you all for participating. Let's give a hand of applause to all the participants.